Today we're gonna talk about 3 topics that I didn't include in my 4.0 Fontaine Analysis because they were pretty much unrelated. This means that you don't need my previous video to understand this one, but if you haven't watched it, go take a look. I talked about pretty much everything that we learned in Fontaine 4.0 with a carefully detailed chronology of the events, plus a few interesting, sometimes borderline crazy theories here and there. Link to the analysis video in the description and in the cards. As always, this is a theory video. I use information available in the game, but my own theories and conclusions are not the official lore of the game, unless I got something right and it's confirmed in the game itself. With that being said, let's start the video right away with something we all have been waiting for, something about the nation I'm the most excited for. The talking stick tells us the story of the hero Tenoch, who left Natlan and went on a journey toward the darkness of the Cataclysm to fight. When he saw the dark skies approaching Natlan, he decided to recruit people from the 6 major tribes to accompany him in the fight, and by recruiting I mean that they didn't have a choice. They were either willing to go or he would have convinced them with a talking stick. It seems Tenoch was a really well-known person in Natlan, but most people saw him as a bad person and they didn't accept him. In fact, it seems he didn't belong to any of the 6 major tribes of Natlan, or if he did, he was not part of them anymore. But it also seems that he had a past with almost everyone he recruited, whether it was rivalry, past expeditions in which Tenoch's presence was essential for success, or just the fear of his obsidian club. From the first tribe came the runner Wanjiru, a woman with dark skin full of deep scars, together with her unruly companion Kayeke. They decided to accompany Tenoch because they were tired of fighting the other tribes and they were itching for some real dangerous fight. From the second tribe came the brave Menelek and his faithful companion Gobo. Menelek, differently from the people of every other tribe, didn't really hate Tenoch and he saw him as a hero and a brother. From the third tribe came Sanhaj Kompore and his enigmatic companion Mahamba. Sanhaj decided to accompany Tenoch because he had already experienced the talking stick in the past, and because he was promised the spoils of war before leaving to fight against the Cataclysm. He also had some divination powers and he foresaw both Tenoch's and his own death in this expedition, but he didn't really care. From the fourth tribe came Burkina, who never really fought in any battle before, accompanied by his reckless companion Kongamato. They joined the expedition voluntarily because they trusted Tenoch's obsidian club and they thought that his scars were proof of his ability to do what needed to be done. From the fifth tribe came Sunjata, chief of the mines, and his steady companion Muhuru. Sunjata didn't really like Tenoch and in the past he even petitioned the Pyro Archon to have him expelled from Natlan, but in order to keep his tribe out of this battle, he decided to join Tenoch's party. Lastly, from the 6th tribe came the giant Tupac, who is the only one without a +1. He was challenged by a lot of people in the past, so he's full of scars, broken bones, obsidian shards embedded in his skin, and in a fight between him and Tenoch, the latter came out with broken ribs, some wounds, and an eye that can't perceive distance anymore. Still, although all rivals, they laughed together and Tupac joined the party. The expedition then left Natlan and reached the place where their final battle took place, a place that is now known as Marijivari. Now, in the description of this weapon there are a lot of names, which tell us that Natlan is gonna be a mix of Africa, mainly Congo and Kenya, and South America, specifically the Aztecs and the Inca. Tenoch comes from the 14th century legendary ruler of the Aztecas, who brought them from Aztlan, the legendary city or area where the Aztecs came from, to the place where Huitzilopochtli, the god of the sun, told them to build Tenochtitlan, their capital. The god told them that they would find an eagle perched atop a cactus with a snake in its beak, which was the sign of their promised land. If you wanna know more about the Aztecs, Huitzilopochtli, and how I believe him to be the main inspiration for the Pyro Archon, I have a whole video about Natlan where I analyzed in detail everything there is to know about this topic. Wanjiru comes from Samuel Wanjiru, a Kenyan long-distance runner who, at the 2008 Olympics in Beijing, became the first Kenyan to ever win the gold medal in the marathon, and he also set an Olympic record time. Sadly, he died not too long ago in 2011, so I guess this character was a tribute to a great athlete. Menelik probably comes from Menelik I, the first emperor of Ethiopia and founder of the Solomonic dynasty, since he was the son of the biblical King Solomon and of Makeda, the Queen of Sheba, of which we had a small reference in Sumeru with Lilupar, since the Queen of Sheba brought spices to Solomon to test his knowledge, and Lilupar talks about spices from afar, but especially because Makeda's Arabic name was Bilqis, which was used for the Sumeru quest called the Dirge of Bilqis. Sanhaj Kompore is composed of two names. Sanhaj was a chief of Himyar, Apollary, that is a type of rain, in southern highlands of Yemen, and was a progenitor of the Somo, but the name could also come from the Sanhaja Berber tribe who, like before, came from Himyar. I couldn't find much about Kompore though, other than being a recurrent last name from Burkina Faso, which takes me to the next name, Burkina, which obviously comes from the African nation of Burkina Faso and it translates to upright. Sundiata probably comes from Sundiata Keita, the Lion of Mali, a prince and founder of the Mali Empire. Lastly, Tupac, which is not the singer, is either Tupac Amaru, an Inca emperor, or Tupac Amaru II, a self-proclaimed monarch of the new Inca Empire and leader of an indigenous rebellion against the Spanish in Peru. Now, when it comes to the companions these Natlan people took with them, they are all names of cryptid creatures. Cryptids are beings that are either not recognized by the scientific community or they are ancient extinct beings that some people believe are still alive. Nessie, the Loch Ness Monster, is for example a cryptid. Kayake is a crypto-hominid from the borders between the Republic of Congo and Angola. It is said to be similar to man and with a distinct language of its own. Ungobo is a surviving dinosaur, specifically a ceratopsian, from the savanna region of Cameroon. It is said to be the size of an ox with 6 horns, hooves, and it usually fights elephants for the land. Mahamba is another dinosaur, a mosasaur, from the Democratic Republic of Congo. Kongamato is a pterodactylus, another dinosaur from Zambia, a giant winged creature with no hairs nor feathers, either red or black. And lastly, Muhuru is a giant grey lizard from Kenya with triangular ridges on its back. Considering that only the companions were named after cryptids, I think there are two options here. They're either all supernatural kinds of monsters that prominent people live with, which would explain why we were told what the first people thought about Tennoch while the companions were just named, or they're simply humans and the writers just had fun using those names, but I don't think this to be the case. Anyway, something else I thought to be very interesting is obsidian, because it's a recurring material in the Aztecs mythology, especially when it comes to the underworld. If you're interested, I also fully explained this in my Natlan video that I mentioned before. Now, moving on, let's talk about Childe. Childe has been having mood swings lately and it caused his vision to lose its power. He obtained this power in the Abyss, so we could assume that he received this vision there, especially since we don't have his vision story but only his delusion story. But also because the Abyss is toxic to humans but not to vision holders, and Childe survived there for 3 months, so he must have received this vision when he fell there. Now, what could be happening? Skirk, the mysterious woman he found in the Abyss, who became his master, and I still think she's a member of the Hexen Circle, told him that he awakened it, and it left some residue inside of him. Childe's presence in the Abyss, or the fact that he received a vision while down there, may have awakened the whale he saw in what he believes to be a dream, and that whale may be that it that Skirk was talking about. Considering that the whole situation in Fontaine is strictly related to the Abyss, it could be that the Abyss power is resonating with whatever abyssal residue is inside of Childe and it's compromising his link to Celestia or simply with the elements, so his vision. Going back to the whale though, Childe said that the one from his elemental powers looks the same as the one he saw in the dream, and that is a narwhal, same as his constellation. And the myth tells of a woman who tricked his blind son or stepson into thinking that she missed the boar that she was hunting so that she and her daughter could eat the meat without sharing it with the boy. In the end, the boy regained his vision and found out what her mother did, so he pushed her into the ocean, she was surrounded by whales, she died and was turned into a narwhal. Interestingly, Childe also gained his vision in the Abyss before seeing the narwhal, so the whale may be more connected to him than we think, but sadly I guess it's too early to figure out what's going on with Childe. I guess we will have to find out in version 4.1 when we are going to visit him in the fortress of Meropide. And this takes me to the next topic. Why was Childe convicted despite being innocent? Well, Neuvillette was conducting a trial about the disappearance of women in Fontaine, so for him, Childe was innocent once Vacher spilled the beans. But the Oratrice has a mind of her own, it has a consciousness inside, and its purpose is to deliver justice and defend Fontaine from sin. Considering how Childe has, it seems, a bit of residue inside of him, and he's using a device that was created from the remains or wrath of the dead gods, or maybe simply because he was losing his control over his powers, the Oratrice may have decided that it would have been wise to stop and detain him before something irreversible could happen. He is innocent, but he's still a national threat. I think that the Oratrice has part of Egeria's consciousness inside, a piece that was brought back from the Vorukash Oasis where she died. Now, Egeria was very gentle, and it seems that she cared even about the dragons, so her consciousness, knowing what the Abyss can do and how dangerous it is, may have decided to imprison him not because he's guilty of something but, and this is my wishful thinking, as a safety measure for both Fontaine and for himself, so that his problem can be solved before things get out of hand. Anyway, I also hope that Skirk will make an appearance now that Childe is suffering from whatever he awakened in the Abyss. I mean, it's kinda strange that she was named for the first time right now when Childe suddenly lost his Hydro powers. And yes, I'm ignoring the character stories because those are unknown to the Traveler, we only know them. Now, about the Oratrice Mécanique d'Analyse Cardinale, I said that it could be hosting a piece of the consciousness of the original Hydro Archon, because it would make sense to allow her to deliver sentences since she was the actual god of justice. This takes me back to Guillotin, but not Hélène, the actual Joseph Ignace Guillotin. During the French Revolution, the execution methods for criminals were rather brutal and excruciating, so Guillotin simply suggested to find a painless method, and after the guillotine was created, it was given his name even though he had nothing to do with its creation. Now, the Oratrice is believed to have been created by Furina, even Neuvillette is convinced of that, but it is clear that she had nothing to do with it and she doesn't even know how it works. So, who created it? Well, René did bring back something with a will from the Vorukash Oasis for Hélène to study, so my guess is that it was a piece of the Gaukerina, the lotus inside the Harvest Token, the actual thing in which the consciousness of the Hydro Archon is slumbering. The Opéra Épiclès was also built when the Research Institute of Kinetic Energy Engineering was being built, and they are very close to one another. So what I'm thinking is that the writers may have used the real Guillotin story and wrote it the other way around. Alain Guillotin was the actual person who created the Oratrice, but everyone believes that it was Furina. So in this case, instead of being attributed something he didn't build, Alain was never attributed something he did build. When it comes to the voice that Lini heard though, it's kinda weird that it recognized him, but I don't really know what to say here. One thing's for certain, we will go down there to see the core of the Oratrice in version 4.1, and the elevator may be this platform behind the Opéra Épiclès, unless this is not an elevator and this building is gonna act like an actual guillotine, breaking the platform underneath it. I wonder if we will find our new weekly boss there, something that is maybe threatening the Oratrice or is trying to steal something from it, like a Gnosis for example. Next topic, let's talk about Arlecchino. It seems that she's more or less a normal human since several years ago, I would estimate 20 to 30 years ago considering her apparent age, she was one of the orphans of the House of the Hearth, and she clashed with the person who was the knave at the time, and as a consequence she took his title and became the new knave, which also seems like something many people didn't accept, like Efim Znižević, a former tutor of the House of the Hearth who left the institution and is now using Arlecchino's name to trick the other orphans, now Fatui agents, into following him. Now, Arlecchino is called Father or Atitz, which simply means father in Russian, and this could be easily explained. The original knave, who probably founded the House of the Hearth, was a man and he was called Father, so every successor gets the title of Father even if they're women. What troubles me is that the orphans get the patronym Znižević or Znižnievna according to their gender. The thing is that the patronym in Russia is the name of one's father, so it means son or daughter of father's name. So for these orphans, their patronym means that they are the sons and daughters of Snezhnaya. So why is the knave also called their father? Well, the explanation may be actually very simple, but to get there, we need to get to know Arlecchino a little better. I said that she is a normal human, but this may be an understatement both because she's a Harbinger, so she's definitely special in some way, but above all because her eyes are not those of a human, and no other character so far has ever had similar eyes, but also her hands are completely black. Yes, that's her skin, not a glove, unless she cut very precise holes in them to let her fingernails come out, but we all know that's not the case. In Genshin Impact, we know that eyes and ears are indicative of a different race of beings. They are striking features that indicate that a person is not a simple human. Sadly, the tips of her ears are always covered by her hair, so we couldn't see if they're human-like or not, but I don't think she's actually just a normal human like Childe, and even him, as we saw, is most likely not entirely human anymore. Considering that her skin is black, it feels like she's being corrupted maybe, or that something was injected in her body, turning parts of it black. The arms are the usual spot for injections and blood flows toward the hands first, so it could explain why her hands are black. They also remind me of Zhongli's god form, since his arms are also black, but I don't know if that's related. We also have to remember that Dottore is one of the Harbingers, so I wouldn't exclude him being responsible for some kind of experiment on her. I mean, he is from Sumeru, which is very close to Fontaine, and Arlecchino is said to have been a child several years ago, and we know that he experiments on children. I'm basically thinking of a backstory similar to Collei's, and the scientist could be still Dottore, but it could also be someone else entirely. She may also have been experimented on by the Narcissenkoids Ordo of the present, basically Jacob and whoever it is that is working with him. I still think it's Carter, by the way. I mean, Arlecchino does share Renee's goal of saving Fontaine, the only difference being that he tried with the Abyss and with Primordial Water while she's going straight for the Gnosis. So did we find who made her the way she is? Nope. I think someone else experimented on her, so let's keep talking about Arlecchino. Her personality almost kinda clashes with what Childe and Scaramouche told us about her. They see her as a mad woman, someone who doesn't have a sane bone in her body, someone who would dispose of anyone who witnessed her true crazy self, and also someone who would betray anyone for her own interests. But from what Lini and Lynette told us and what we read in their character cards, she seems to be a loving mother, someone who actually cares about her orphans, and someone who is willing to do everything she can, even striking a deal with the Tsaritsa, to save the people of her nation. She doesn't really seem that psychotic as the Harbingers portray her. So who should we believe? Well, I guess both. She is a Fatui, so she can't possibly be completely sane, that's a given, but being a Harbinger also allowed her to obtain special powers and abilities, and she was even able to ask the Tsaritsa for a favor so that she could achieve her own personal goal of saving the people of Fontaine. This also means that she can't afford anything or anyone to impede her, so she will remove any obstacle no matter what. Who knows, maybe after saving Fontaine, she's even gonna leave the Fatui altogether, at least I hope so. One thing though, when Lini went to find Lynette after being sent as a gift to an aristocrat, he found Arlecchino on the guy's dead body and she said something interesting.
The House of the Hearth welcomes you, for your interests align with ours. Here, none will ever betray you. Indeed, betrayal shall never be permitted here.
What's interesting is that here that she said. The aristocrat was keeping children in the basement for some reason, right? What if that place was the House of the Hearth? The aristocrat was the previous knave that we know Arlecchino fought against and took the title from, and he was experimenting on children, among which Arlecchino herself, which turned her into whatever she is now. I mean, we do know that the Fatui are 11, but we were never told when the knave became one of them, really. Since the House of the Hearth is a Fontaine institution? Anyway, it doesn't have anything to do with Snezhnaya, even the kids are all Fontainians, so it could mean that the first knave to join the Fatui Harbinger could have been Arlecchino herself, after she took on the title of the knave around 15 years ago, give or take, by disposing of the previous one out of vengeance because of the experiments he conducted on her, becoming the head of the orphanage as a consequence. Arlecchino does look 25 years oldish, so if we consider what Momoyo told us, she would have been a child at the orphanage when this happened. She would have been 10 years old, give or take. Lastly, and this is very quick, the way the Harbingers appearances work is pretty easy. There is always a main Harbinger we actually have to deal with and a secondary Harbinger that is just there. In Mondstadt, Signora was the main one, but since it was the first Archon quest, she didn't really do much other than stealing the noses and introducing the concept of Fatui Harbingers. Scaramouche was the secondary one, and if you didn't play since the beginning of the game, you didn't even get to meet him. I'm one of these players, for example. In Liyue, Childe is obviously the main Harbinger since we had to fight against him, while Signora was the secondary one since she again just took the noses and goodbye. Inazuma was Mondstadt all over again, only this time Signora, the main Harbinger, finally did something while Scaramouche just talks to us again. We could say that Childe also made an appearance, which was the first time we got 3 Harbingers in a nation, but if you didn't play the event, you missed him. In Sumeru, although it feels like Dottore was the main Harbinger, he's actually the secondary one. He just set up everything for Scaramouche, the main Harbinger. I mean, we, the Traveler, fought against Scaramouche while we barely even talked to Dottore. In Fontaine we met Childe, most likely the secondary Harbinger, while Arlecchino, who is supposed to get the noses and use it, seems to be the main Harbinger, right? Anyway, we know that Capitano is in Natlan, so we know 1 out of 2 Harbingers that we're gonna meet there, and Snezhnaya has Pantalone and Pulcinella, who never leave their nation. Considering that Pantalone doesn't even have a vision and he's just focused on Mora, while Pulcinella appears in the Travail video so he's gonna be a playable character, he may be the main Harbinger of the nation, also considering that he's the mayor. We are also going to meet Pierro, but I think he's gonna be the main Harbinger in past Khaenri'ah. I have a whole theory that the last chapter is gonna be us going back to the past, and I have a whole video on it, link in the card in the description. So what's the problem with the Harbingers anyway? We are missing 2 Harbingers and 1 is going to Natlan with Capitano. The last one can possibly also be in Snezhnaya. There's already Pantalone, Pulcinella and Pierro, Dottore is probably gonna be there as well, his main body and his last segment it is, and we're also gonna meet Childe again since his family is there and we know Tusser already. Too many people in Snezhnaya, so the last one needs to be either in Fontaine or in Natlan. If Childe in Fontaine is similar to his appearance in Inazuma, so someone who was just passing through, or in this case someone who is spending his time in prison, maybe Fontaine is gonna have another Harbinger. And if I have to bet, who would it be better than the one who is focused on mechanical puppets, Sandrone? I mean, look at how the automaton is dressed. It just looks so Fontainean with that hat and the cravat, the neckcloth that was widely used in France in the 17th and 18th century. I could also think, to be honest, that Arlecchino is not even going to be the main Harbinger in Fontaine. Think about it, at the end of the Winter Night's Lasso video, Dottore made another appearance, which meant that he was gonna be in Sumeru, but Scaramouche ended up being the Harbinger we had to deal with, and we didn't even know that he was gonna be there. The same could happen for Arlecchino, who was in the Overture, and the main Harbinger may end up being Sandrone. Talking about Sandrone, and this is something I talked about in my video about the Harbingers and their names from the Commedia dell'arte, I think that the real Fatus is the automaton, not the girl who looks a little too much like Catherine. You know, something like a consciousness implanted into a machine, maybe by someone who was studying those machines in the past, someone who cared about a certain girl so much that they made a little puppet to carry in their hand like a little treasure. Does this remind you about someone in specific? And that's it, I hope you liked the video. If you did, don't forget to leave a thumbs up, and if you're interested in Genshin Impact Theory videos, consider subscribing. Just a quick update, I'm still working on the huge video that is coming out after 4.1, so I do hope you like both the topic and the specific style I'm going for. Anyway, thanks for watching, and until next time, over and out.